Good afternoon, everyone. Good morning to our US viewers. And I do have to apologize. I think I may have actually put the wrong time on for US, for the global time zone. I also want to say thank you wherever you are in the world. We're so delighted you've taken the time to join us today for our LinkedIn live chat on this World Atopic Eczema Day. For those who don't already know me, my name is Marie Ennis O'Connor. I'm a communications consultant. I work at the intersection of healthcare, of digital health and social media. And to this work, I bring my own personal experience of being a patient advocate. And for those who perhaps are not familiar with Merikoi, your host for this event, Merikoi is a global team of dedicated, talented people with a clear mission to co-create healthcare solutions that help people better navigate life with a disease. And what makes Merikoi so unique in this field is the high value that Merikoi gives to patient experts like you're going to meet today. Merikoi's patient experts combine disease-specific experience with specialist professional experience to create better healthcare solutions. So now on to the topic of today's discussion. Atopic eczema is one of the most prevalent skin conditions globally. It affects over 230 million people worldwide. Now, it's often dismissed as just a skin condition, but it's far more than just itchy skin. It's a complex, multidimensional condition that impacts mental health, impacts daily life, and places an immense burden on people with the condition and those who care for them. So to raise awareness of the impact and the burden of this condition, we're truly honored to have with us today two of our wonderful patient experts, Ashley Wall and Ruth Holroyd. So I'm just going to bring Ashley and Ruth into the room now. Hi. It's lovely to see you, and thank you both for joining us. Ruth just reminded me just before coming on the call that today, right now, as we're broadcasting live, is at the Queen's funeral. So I can understand that perhaps a lot of people are not tuning in live, but I do want to say thank you to those of you who are. So let me go ahead now and introduce Ashley and Ruth to you. So Ashley is a writer, she's a consultant, and she's an eczema patient advocate who has battled this skin condition for 3 decades. She's extremely passionate about helping those living with this condition. And Ashley hopes to see eczema disappear within her lifetime. Ruth is an author, she's a blogger, she's a patient advocate also. She writes about allergies, about anaphylaxis, asthma, eczema, and topical steroid withdrawal on her award-winning blog, whatallergy.com. Ruth won the Free From Food Awards Hero Award in 2021, and she's written 2 books, Anaphylaxis, The Essential Guide, an action plan for living with life-threatening allergies, which focuses on anxiety and fear and how to live with the daily challenge of living with a life-limiting condition. Her second book, The Shape of Skin, is a poetry book for people with eczema, with psoriasis, and with sensitive skin. So thank you both for taking the time to speak with us today. And I guess one of the things that I want to clear up from the very beginning, and you can hear me stumbling over the word atopic eczema, it doesn't exactly roll off the tongue. One of the other things that I've read is that atopic eczema is also called atopic dermatitis. And I guess one of the things that I'm curious about, is there a difference between the two? What's in a name? Ashley, let's start with you.
First and foremost, thank you for having me. And I love working with Ruth. I haven't seen her in a while, so I'm so excited. So I would say, yes, there actually is a difference between eczema and atopic dermatitis. I would categorize eczema as a whole, so it's broad. And atopic dermatitis is for somebody who pretty much has moderate to severe eczema, and it's lifelong. There's different kinds of dermatitis, like contact dermatitis. There's dermatitis of your scalp, your hands. There's different areas, but atopic dermatitis is pretty much where it's spread all throughout your body, where other eczemas aren't. So I pretty much consider eczema like a hub, and then there's different branches. So atopic dermatitis is one hub of eczema. That's how I look at it.
Well, that really helped for me to understand as well. Thank you, Ashley. Ruth, I want to ask you that question. At the very beginning, I said that, it must be very frustrating that so many people dismiss a skin condition like atopic eczema or dermatitis as, it's just a skin condition. It's just itchy skin. Get on with it. So I'd like to ask you, is that very frustrating for you?
It's very frustrating, yeah. And I'm sure Ashley has had this as well, where people will show you pictures of their rash and you think, look at me, my skin's so much worse than yours. It is really frustrating because it's affected me since childhood. I grew up with a lot of shame and guilt because I was always being told off for scratching and told off for getting blood on my clothes. So I just internalized all that. I felt like it was my fault. It affects your sleep, it affects your mental health, it affects how attractive you feel to other people. People comment on it. So as a woman, that's really hard. I always had it worse on my face. It affects every single part of my life, just from being able to wash the dishes and make the bed. Sometimes when your skin splits when you try and do things, it's life limiting, and it's sometimes for some of us we don't grow out of it. So it's not just an itch.
And being misunderstood in that kind of way, have you found that have you gravitated, say, online to find more information, more support, more feeling of being understood? Both of you, I'm just curious to know, where do you go for information if you're newly diagnosed, or if you're feeling that nobody understands me, if you're in that space? Ashley, I'll come back to you again.
Okay, sure. I didn't know whether to talk or not. Yeah, absolutely. I 100% can relate to what Ruth is saying. And I found, when we were younger with eczema, there wasn't the internet. So that was even another layer of hiding it and shame, kind of like what Ruth mentioned. So it was even harder because we didn't see any representation. But now I've joined communities. I do like Zoom calls with just eczema communities or experts. I attend events and stuff. If I, am having a breakout, I will contact anybody in the community and talk about it. I'll also do research on, certain websites or social media or whatnot, but the internet has really changed the game completely. It has brought so much access, something that we didn't have before, which was so unfortunate. But I first I turned to my peers, and then usually I turn to information online or medical experts, just because the peers can contact you quickly or more quickly than booking an appointment with a doctor, or sometimes even doing research, because there's a lot to sort through. But I just love the online community with atopic dermatitis eczema, because people are so helpful. Everybody wants to help. Everybody gives opinions, so it's really great. That's where I look to.
And I guess I'll come to you, Ruth. And so obviously we know there's pluses and minuses to going searching for information online. Have you seen anything that kind of you go, whoa, no?
Yeah, it's really hard. And just to what Ashley said, I don't know about in America where you live, Ashley, but in England it's very hard to get to see a medical professional. So if you want to get advice, you might have to wait 6 months to a year if you're trying to do that on the National Health, and then you might get a 20-minute consultation. I wrote a blog about this for Merakoy about navigating that whole arena, but it just leaves you with this kind of yawning gap of where is the information. And there was a study recently done about the social media rise in people talking about eczema, and it's going up massively. And I think perhaps that is because we don't feel heard, and we don't always feel like we get to have the advice we want from the medical professionals. So certainly since I've been blogging, there are so many more people on Instagram and TikTok and sharing their journeys. And I think the big problem there that I see is where people offer their advice and say, this is what you should do, and they're not doctors. So that might be, you should celery juice, you should do this, you should stop moisturizing, you should. I get it all the time, and I think that's where it's dangerous, because people will cut out whole food groups without ever having spoken to somebody about that, and that can be quite bad for their diet. So I think it's hard, but like Ashley said, it's brilliant. I've made so many friends and learnt so much, but you have to be careful what you take from there. And sometimes it can be quite triggering as well for me, like seeing bad eczema. Sometimes I have to come right off it because my whole life revolves around it, and it can be quite triggering to see people struggling and people with bad skin, and then people offering bad, or what I might not think is sensible advice to be offering to the World Wide Web. It can be quite difficult to kind of step back and not get upset by it.
I can imagine, and actually I can imagine, and one of the things that I'm aware of is that we're talking about atopic dermatitis, atopic eczema, but we could easily be talking about any health issue or skin or anything that we sorry, not skin, but any health issue that we advocate for, is that going into that online space can actually exhaust us as well, who've been in this space for so long. Ashley, I wanted to ask you a question around whether you think that it could be more done by healthcare professionals or by organizations or by industry, by pharma, by the healthcare industry in general, to actually be in that space and to be providing, be part of those conversations and maybe balancing out some of that information that is not quite right.
Yeah, absolutely. Ruth is 100% right. There is so much information. I would say it's information overload when it comes to a certain skin condition, and everybody wants to be seen, everybody wants to be heard. The issue with that is there's not enough people to actually sort out what's fact or fiction, what's truthful, what might work for some might not work for others. And so we want to make sure we're providing resources with content. It's very important to have research done with content. But I would say I've seen a lot of counteractive reaction videos. So if somebody puts out something and it may or may not be true, more so, I've seen doctors kind of do like a split screen, do a reaction video and say, hey, I see what you're saying, but here are some factual information about what you put out and why what you put out may not actually be true. And here's the research to back it up. So I think this is a great arena for pharmaceutical companies, representatives, doctors, anybody in that realm that's super knowledgeable, but also can back up their information to counteract all the information that may or may not be true or hasn't been tested or researched. And it goes beyond like a buzzword or a buzz content for people to just have engagement. Like, we want to make sure we're backing everything up that's factual, that makes sense, and that people can really take information from and not sort of run with like a, irrational idea of cutting out complete food groups and other things that may work for some, but not for everybody as a whole. So there's a huge opportunity there. Yeah.
Yeah, I love that. I'm going to move to another question now. So we have a person with a condition, a skin condition that's been perhaps newly diagnosed, and this is still a very new area. I'm curious to know that Ruth, you mentioned that you wrote a blog for Merakoy, and by the way, it's a really comprehensive blog. It's excellent. It's on the website, merakoy.com/blog. I highly recommend you read it. And I read it again, actually, before coming on the call. And one of the things that I know that you feel very strongly about is shared decision making. So when we're armed with the right information, it can help us to make better decisions. I'd love for you to talk a little bit more around that, Ruth, if you don't mind.
Yeah, I think the way I've felt that it goes in the UK is quite often you are told what treatment you will have, and you go in there, they see your skin and you say, right, we'll give you more of this, we'll give you more of that. And it's been very hard to open up dialogue and to share what's been going on with your skin. And particularly for me, I have found that the mainstream treatments weren't working for me, and I'm going off piece. I'm doing it naturally, and I struggled to get help from them. It seemed to be the last resort for them to help me do patch testing and contact allergen testing and food allergen testing, and anything that was not treatment based was hard to get them to speak to me about. And I do think it's really important that patients have a choice and that we can have an open dialogue like that. But I think the other thing that I really feel strongly about is being an advocate for your position, for your condition. Because if there is a treatment out there that you really want and you can find out about it, then you can go and ask your practitioner for it, because you might not be offered that. It's sometimes difficult to get to the treatment that you want. There can be like pathways you have to go through. And it's very frustrating for people who are really struggling with their skin, because it's hard in a 20-minute consultation, even for the doctor or dermatologist to kind of get an idea of what you're going through. So it's so hard to get the best out of those appointments and to like come armed with all the information that you have and pictures of your skin and what is the hardest thing for you. And I found it helped when I had an objective. And it's too difficult to do everything at once. So an objective for that session, I want this one thing to be spoken about, and we'll try and tackle that. Because Ashley, if you know what it's like with eczema, it's not like, oh, here, I found the answer, this is what will help. It's a million things. It's like this, and this, and this, and not that. And you try things that don't work, and you eventually find the detective work helps you find the way to navigate the condition on your own. So you kind of have to become a bit of an expert, because the GP often isn't. He's a general practitioner. So if that's the person you're seeing, he isn't going to know probably as much as the patient in many cases.
I'm really struck listening to you, Ruth. And by the way, again, just to go back to your blog, that was a really powerful blog, because it was almost like a guide for your first appointment or your next appointment. These are the things that you can do to just make yourself feel a little bit more empowered and to just take back control again. But I'm so struck listening to you, Ruth. How like the hard work. I remember hearing before something about people don't talk enough, or maybe healthcare practitioners don't maybe give enough credit to patients for the amount of work it takes to be a patient. So Ashley, I mean, and that's a burden as well. Would you agree, Ashley, about that hard work?
Yes, absolutely. It is maybe similar to the UK, but in the US, it depends on what kind of insurance you have. So that is one kind of barrier, even just getting to the doctor. Do you have insurance? Do you not have insurance? What kind of insurance? Do you take your insurance? Okay, we take your insurance, but will the medication be covered? Maybe the medication won't be covered, or maybe part of it will be covered. Do you make enough money to prolong? It is such a draining process that you're going to start to find people kind of trying to solve it with the home products, even before they even get to the doctor. I remember hearing one doctor talk about his frustration of how people come in when they're at their absolute worst for their skin. They don't come in when it's starting or in the middle of it. And I said, one of the reasons is because there's so many different barriers and layers. Like Ruth said, it could take 6 months. It might take 3 months, but that's a long time. And they're trying to do whatever they can. They're in pain, they're in agony. So they want a quick fix. And if you can't see the doctor within a couple weeks, months, maybe even up to a year, that's very frustrating for a patient. So people are, it's a very, very frustrating process that kind of needs to change, hopefully. I think I also read that doctors only get 7 to 15 minutes with each patient, which sometimes it's not a lot. And a lot of the times they're double booked, triple booked. There's a lot of patients, a lot of people have issues that they're coming to see them for. And you kind of do feel like a number, like they listen to keywords sometimes, not every doctor, but some, they listen to keywords of what you say. And based on that, they'll go off a diagnosis and they will write you a prescription and then be on your way. And as if you're your own advocate, you want more. You want to learn how to manage it, not just how to temporarily treat it. So there's a whole system of just, that needs to be worked on for patients. It's very intimidating as well. And, people do wait to the last minute because it kind of feels like a burden to see the doctor. Sometimes they don't make you feel good. They make you very uncomfortable. Even the whole walking into the office, like you're sitting on a cold chair, with the little paper plastic, and they're above you on like a higher chair, or standing with the chart, not really making eye contact. It's just a very intimidating process for many. So, and if you're already not feeling good, that, adds another element of like, oh, here we go. Like they're going to say X, Y, and Z, and it might not be X, Y, and Z, but, so it's definitely difficult for patients. So hopefully we can work on that.
And I don't know about you, but I've left in tears from appointments as well, which
I've had very dismissive doctors, unfortunately. Not all. There have been some incredible ones, but you can tell they're busy. It's almost like you feel like you're a burden when they come in and they're so stressed and exhausted, and you're like, oh, like, sorry that you have to come see me for my condition, but this is what I'm going through. You don't want to feel like that.
No.
You want to feel like, hey, you're in the right place. Let's work on it. Tell me what's going on. You want it. Hopefully, you want your doctor to be not a therapist, but have like a much clearer bedside manner. Patients are in agony for the most part. And so anything that makes them feel like a burden will already just, make the whole experience not great, and have people avoid it if they can.
Gosh, there is so much in what you said there. My mind is going,
No.
I'm thinking about things like, social determinants of health,
Mhm.
that piece where healthcare professionals are perhaps just not getting why patients are not coming until it's become that desperate situation. And so, maybe they need to ask those questions. Why is this what's happening? I know that both of you at the beginning, Ashley, you said you love working with Ruth and you hadn't seen
Yeah.
her for a while. So I know you've both worked on a project for Americoy. I have to ask you, please do not say the name of the client, but I would just love to hear, because I believe part of that project was around the patient journey. And I'm wondering, was that the kind of thing that you were unraveling? Those, how do you intervene earlier?
Mhm.
Is that part of the work that you were doing with the client?
Yeah, absolutely. It was a little bit more of like a clinical trial.
Okay.
So we were kind of consulting on specific steps that can help the clients and the providers, I guess. I'm not sure what word to use, for clinical trials, and how to get people engaged and to get people to be excited about clinical trials. It is a process. I mean, even just qualifying, it's just such a long, arduous process that we were trying to kind of help simplify it and make it better on the patient end. Because if you want these people to try different solutions and whatnot, you have to make it comfortable for them. You have to make it worth their while. They're doing this not only to help themselves, but really to advocate for others. Because there's a lot of people that have this condition that do not talk about it. I mean, they'll look at specific advocates, and there's a lot of us, but there's a lot of people that just kind of are in the background. They don't have a voice. And what we are trying to do is help them come out of that. They don't have to be an advocate themselves, but they should advocate for themselves at least. And that's so important. You want the process to be smooth sailing and change from the way it has been. And it can change. So that's pretty much what
Yeah.
that journey was like.
To add to that as well, one of the things we went into a lot, and it was coming into my head when you were talking about the previous question, Ashley. I have never been asked by anyone, how do you feel? And I think that's the bit that gets missed. And we spent a long time talking about the mental health aspect of living with chronic skin condition during that project as well, just to help them understand the sheer magnitude of that. And that brings the whole complexity to decision making and whether people will enroll and stick with trials.
Of course.
Yeah.
Of course.
Personally, I'm really one of the ones that's too scared to do them. So it was interesting. We were all different. All the people there were on that project was different, and it was fascinating.
Yeah, it was so great.
Stop talking because we could have gone on for hours.
Yes, it was so great. We learned so much. It was wonderful.
And I'm sure the client learned a lot as well. And did you find that the mental health aspect was almost a surprise to them, or were they maybe conscious of it, but maybe had you gone down a deeper layer with the mental health burden of being diagnosed with a skin condition such as atopic dermatitis? Ruth?
Yeah, I think it was a bit of I think they were focusing more on the symptoms, and we definitely talked to probably more than 50% on the mental health and some on the symptoms. So yeah, I don't think they were expecting it to be maybe that quite that big of a gap,
But as you said, Ruth, that mental health, it's not just about how you feel. It's actually about how you are equipped to make decisions, whether you will continue with the treatment. There's so much in that. So it's almost like I said at the beginning, it's not just itchy skin. It's not just your mood. It's actually a fundamental part. So Ashley, can I just come back to you again for a second around the research? I'm interested to know what kind of research is going on. Are you excited about the future of research? Are there any obvious gaps in research that you feel needs to be addressed more urgently?
Yeah, there's so much going. I can't even wrap my mind around how much research is going on. One thing that I thought was interesting is that there was a doctor at a conference or expo that I was recently at, and he actually brought in the element of environment. We always talk about how eczema is internal, but we haven't talked about environment and pollutions in the air. And I thought that was really interesting because there was a study, which I can't remember all the facts about, but how your specific environment, the pollutions in the air and all that stuff could be related to your eczema and how severe it was in developing countries as opposed to third world or not as developed countries. So I thought that was really, really interesting that pollution can play a huge factor, smog, whatever chemical regulations are going on in your country could also add to eczema. So that is something that I'm really, really fascinated about. But yeah, no, there's so much research. You know, I remember talking to you previously about how, you know, we talk about back then, there were a lot of studies, there were a couple studies done on eczema, but it was mostly for Europeans and people, not so much people of color, but also there's another element of people that are mixed races and how do they play a factor in having research done for their skin type, blending maybe somebody, you know, there's so many different cultures and ethnicities, but we want to make sure that we're covering them as well. So mixed races, mixed ethnicities, people that are having eczema younger, but also people that are having eczema older. Where do they all fall into clinical trials, testing, research done? There's actually a study, I think by 2050 in America, it's going to be much more diverse. I think diversity is going to be the majority. So where does that play into effect for people that have skin conditions as it continues to climb? And so that will be interesting to see where researchers go with that and inclusion. So I'm really excited about that as well. And hopefully we can discuss that in depth more so maybe on another live. But yeah, you know, I'm excited about that.
Oh, and it's just if I stick with the future for the moment, and I'm going to come to Ruth now this time. So Ruth, please feel free to say something about research as well if you want, but I'm also curious to know, you spoke about, you know, how much you have to track and monitor your skin and then be able to report. I'm curious, both of you actually, are there any digital health apps that you use or for tracking or monitoring, or where does digital health play into the future of this condition?
I track a lot of stuff and I have a tendency to become quite obsessed about what's going on and tracking what's going on each day. And I haven't ever used any apps. I also journal a lot, and I think that's really helped me. But I did a kind of very small poll of a group of eczema people that I chat to, and I think it was very apparent that none of them did. First of all, none of them really used anything apart from maybe counting like how long they'd been doing a certain treatment, like using a counter to record and recording it. We also keep lots of photographs obsessively, but I think there can be a detriment to it. And I think maybe that's why we don't, because focusing so much on what is bad, because these trackers are all asking you to put in what's bad, how itchy were you, where were you itchy, what were you eating? It becomes so obsessive. And I think one thing I've learned is letting go of what is happening and accepting that I have a skin condition and not being so obsessive has been a game changer, because I was obsessed. I was like, this is I can control this. There's a cause to it. I'm going to get to the bottom of it. And I need something to blame. I need to know what was that flare cause. And I became so obsessed, actually made me worse.
Yeah.
And when I let go and stop being like that, I think mentally it's better and my skin seems to improve when I'm less obsessed. So I think whilst there are definitely triggers, it's difficult to find something that will work to try and work out what they are. And I think the apps probably don't work because it becomes an onerous task to use them, and then they're not useful if you haven't been using them. So yeah, it's really hard. There's one thing I have done though, keeping a food diary has really helped me to find triggers. And I haven't found a good app for that, but keeping like a diary of what you've eaten each day is so hard because you need to every little ingredient and every little thing and keep the packets to try and find out what it is. It's not very easy to do. So it's a big topic.
It is a big topic, and I wonder if there's any digital health developers listening in. This is a very important discussion that we're having here, because sometimes I think in digital health, developers can become very enamored of the cleverness of their app, But what you're saying again, Ruth, is coming back to the psychology of this and the behavioral health around it. And that's really where you need to start. I always say about digital health, it's actually not about the technology.
Right.
It's about the people that are going to use the technology. And you
Right.
start with that. Ashley, what about you in terms of digital health? And would you agree with Ruth? Is this a space that you're in, or you use apps?
Yeah, no, I absolutely agree with Ruth. So I have used a couple of eczema apps. The design is fantastic, phenomenal, like layout and everything. However, I will say I think it's a little bit of a reminder of how, kind of what Ruth said, you become obsessed with it. And I think the apps would be wonderful for patient caregivers, maybe spouses if they want, but usually parents, caregivers, maybe something along that realm. I think it'll help people that actually don't have the condition. And I say that because who wants to be reminded of their condition every single day? You become obsessive. It's a little bit like, and usually I feel like the people that would use it are the ones that have severe eczema. Once it becomes moderate to mild, I don't think people are going to use it. And I compare it to a weight loss app. Once you've lost the weight, you don't really need to track every single thing anymore, So they might use it for a brief period of time, but after that, it becomes redundant. It becomes a little bit of like a handicap. I don't know if that's the correct term, but it becomes a little bit burdensome. I'm reminded, oh my gosh, I have this skin condition. Is it getting better? Is it not getting better? If it doesn't get better, I don't think that is going to help people mentally. Seeing how they're tracking their eczema, nothing's working. They've tried a slew of different products and doctor's appointments and all that stuff. After a while, the mental toll that it'll take, not seeing yourself progress or get better, could kind of do more damage than good. So I do think it's best for maybe like parents or caregivers of a patient with eczema to track that. But overall, I'm not. It can work for some people, but I think it's a lot. It's a lot of information that, give or take, may not be the best method. I think just learning how to actually manage your eczema and treat it the best that you can would be a much better solution.
Well, I think you've both been quite clear about that, but it's really valuable to hear you both say that. It's a very valuable point that you're making. So we've been speaking for 30 minutes. It feels like 5 minutes, but we've been speaking for 30 minutes. I'm going to just check and see if anybody has any questions at this point for Ruth or for Ashley. I'm not seeing any questions. Oh, I am. I've just opened my, oh my goodness. I opened the question app. I'm not sure if you can both see, this on
no.
I can't either.
Before you ask the questions, there was one thing about the digital thing that I forgot to mention, and it was...
No, that's okay. I'm coming back to you, Ruth. That's okay. I was just going to give us all a moment, and I was just going to check the questions. But Ruth, please come in just while I'm checking the questions. Please.
Yeah, no, it was to do with digital apps for the specialist dermatologist, because my dermatologist uses apps himself to track my skin, and it's a joke every time he tries to do it. It's hilarious because I need to stand there in my underwear for him to check the skin, and he can see scores. And this app requires him to be so quick. And kind of 50% of the time, it times him out and he hasn't finished and he has to start again. And he's so embarrassed. He's like, oh, I'm so sorry, because I'm standing there almost, in my underwear, and he's awkward about that. So yeah, that app particularly, I don't know if dermatologists feedback, but that app is not helpful, but it gives you a score in the end of how your skin is doing. So it's vital for him, and it's really useful. You get that score and you can see, has it got worse, has it got better, and where it needs to be detailed, like where is it, back, the legs.
Wow. So listening to you, Ruth, it makes me think like how is that app designed? How was it tested? It seems such a fundamental thing to add a few extra moments to the app.
Don't time it, because if someone's got really good skin, it might be quick, but if someone has quite a lot of eczema, he's got to put a score everywhere. That's what it replied to me at the time. So it doesn't need to be timed.
What I think might be a little bit more helpful. Sorry for jumping in. Maybe like a wearable. So like, for example, I'm wearing a digital watch, but if they can create some sort of technology where you can assess a person's skin whether they are an inflammation or outbreak is bound to happen, or you can, like, I don't know, somehow assess like body temperature or something and regulate it through that. I think that would be so much more helpful than like somebody recording things. If an app can, yeah,
Anxiety.
like a watch or like a,
Mm.
anything, wear around your ankle or whatever, and it can assess your skin when it's doing well, when it's not doing well, and it just reports back to an app, and you don't have to do anything, and it could be waterproof because obviously we want to take it in the shower and stuff, or through flare-ups, you're still able to wear it. I don't know what kind of material it would be made from, but if it could be some sort of wearable, I think that would be so much more helpful for people with eczema so that it could assess everything. As opposed to the
Oh,
apps.
okay, well, if anybody's listening in, there's a gap in the market there. I'm just checking the comments here. So,
Yeah.
hi, Matt Eagles. Now, Matt's asked a question about where the most reliable sources of information are online. What I'm going to do is perhaps after this call, Ruth and Ashley, maybe you could just put together a list of a few places that you would recommend, because I think if we start saying it out, people may not just get it at that time. And also, I'm sure you want to think about this. There's a lot of variety. Ashley's speaking to us from the US, Ruth's from the UK, but there's also maybe other European organizations as well. So it might be helpful if we put together a list of recommended, just a few places. And if that's okay with you, Matt, we'll publish that actually on our blog. So we'll do a blog summary of this call, and we'll leave a little space at the end for some resources. So I hope that's okay with you, Matt. I just want to say that the lovely Jennifer Digman. Hi, Jennifer. Jennifer wants to say thank you both for your openness and honesty. Let me see who else. Carolyn has said there's a big problem in that most general practitioners are taught that eczema is not curable. So if that's their belief, how will they help you? They only believe they can try to manage it with meds. I guess that's probably a very big conversation, and we probably don't have a lot of time for that at the moment. I'm just conscious of time. But if there's something
want to hear that, we don't want to be told that.
Yeah. Carolyn agrees with you as well there, Ashley, that there are many studies that have confirmed that outside air pollution, but also inside air pollution from building materials can have a role to play in this. I'm coming back to Matt again. Matt says he's loving this chat. It's so useful. That's really good to hear, Matt. Jennifer's really interested to hear that point about the apps. So Jennifer, if for those who don't know, Jennifer was on with her husband Dan, was on probably our last LinkedIn live chat before we broke up for the summer. And Jennifer lives with multiple sclerosis, and so she agrees with you. She says it's the same actually for MS apps. And then Matt said it's the same for Parkinson's apps as well. Okay. Wow, Matt is really on fire with the questions. If you were designing the perfect app, what thing would you include? Actually, I think, Ashley, you've probably answered that question. The perfect app is probably not an app, it's probably a wearable.
You know what I saw? Sorry, really quickly. I saw this like futuristic thing where you go to a doctor's appointment, it's really beautiful, and everybody, kind of like your name is, I don't know, it was like on a screen or whatnot. You enter a room and there's this like whole body cam. I don't know if people will be comfortable with that, but there's a body cam. It scans from top to bottom, and it can detect any sort of skin condition, disease, underlying disease, anything from like, eczema to maybe like cancer and stuff like that. I hope that becomes the future where you don't, it scans your body and the doctors or whoever's treating you knows right away like what they need to look for and how they can really, come up with a solution, management or treatment for you, as opposed to kind of the system now. I just think that there's so much technology and it really could be utilized with just a quick little scan, and boom, you have X, Y, and Z. Here's a couple of solutions, because we don't want to push like just one, but have options to how you can go about taking care of what issue that you have, and also preventative, as well. I would love for that technology to be out. And if I find it, I'll send you the article or the link.
I believe that we will see all of that. I believe that, there's a lot to be excited about in the future, but I'd like to bring it back to the point that that we're people at the end of the day. We're people living with a condition, and our healing. We can our healing starts within. And you've brought that out very strongly, both of you, in this conversation as well. I want to say thank you. I'm not finished with you both yet. I want to say thank you to those who sent in questions. Thanks to Jennifer and Matt and Carolyn for being so engaged, and to everybody else who's been listening in. I like Jennifer says, it's crazy how chronic illness unites us. It is. I mean, I think we're all people under the skin, aren't we? And that's really what unites us as well. So usually at the end of the LinkedIn Lives, I ask my guests to leave us with a parting thought, something that you want people, when they finish watching this broadcast, whether they're watching live or they're watching the recording, something that you want to leave them with, something that you want them to know. And again, it doesn't necessarily have to be about atopic dermatitis. It can be, as Jennifer was saying, as Matt was saying as well, it can just be about our human experience of living with the condition. So Ruth, let me start with you.
Okay, so I think mine is related to, it could be related to anyone, and it might not even be somebody who's ill, but for me, having such a facial difference, when my skin was at its worst, I looked quite bad. My face was, I think, more swollen. I was very red. My skin was lined deeply. I looked 20 years older. It was flaking, shedding, cracking. People felt they had a right to ask me what was going on all the time. And I think what I would like to teach people is that there is a 5-second rule. If you're looking at someone and you're interested to find out why, and I understand why most people have a genuine interest and they care and they can see that I'm suffering and they want to offer support. But if I can't change it in 5 seconds, then just don't mention it, because it takes me so much effort to go out when my skin is like that. And that was one of the things that made it so hard to live with, because I did not want to be talking about it. I'd probably not been out for weeks and I became a complete hermit. So yeah, I would want everyone to learn the 5-second rule, and it applies to everything. If someone's got a bogey hanging out of their nose, they can change that in 5 seconds. Tell them. If their knickers are stuck in their skirt, tell them. If they have really bad skin, whether that's acne, whether they've had a burn, whether they have a cleft lip, whether they have any condition that makes them look different to you, you have no right to that medical diagnosis. And sometimes we will want to talk about it, but most of the time we won't. So that's what I would like people to know.
Thank you, Ruth. That's a very powerful and very strong message, and I believe it's true for a lot of people. Thank you so much, Ruth. Ashley, follow that.
I know, right? That was beautiful, Ruth. I would say anybody listening in, I would want them to know, as advocates, I think it's so important that people understand the reason why we're doing this is so that they themselves can find their inner strength. I don't think a lot of people understand how powerful they are despite what they're going through. And I hope that they can connect with other people in the community, other people outside the community, but you need support in any way, shape, or form. I'm telling you, it is wonderful when you connect to people that have the same condition or that don't have your condition but have something else, and you get to learn about what's going on in their realm, and they can learn about what's going on in your realm. And just community, it's just so powerful. Honestly, you will feel so much. I've learned so much just talking to people, connecting to people, and just recognize your strength. Honestly, you're not the only one going through a serious condition, whether it's, cancer or skin condition, whatever it is. Just recognize your own strength and know that there's advocates out there. And we want the future to be better. We're excited, we're trying to hopefully pave the way for an awesome future, for nobody to have to struggle in the way that all of us have previously. So
that's a wonderful note to end on. Thank you, Ashley. And thank you, Ruth. Thank you both so much. This has been an incredible conversation. You're two incredibly powerful, strong women and advocates, and we're very lucky to have you working with Maricoy, and we're very lucky that we had you today for this conversation. So if you are listening in and you want to connect with Ashley and Ruth, they both have a very strong social media presence as well, and you've heard that they're writers. You can hear how eloquent they are. Their details are actually on our LinkedIn page, so if you just search for Maricoy on LinkedIn, oh, you're already on our LinkedIn page, well, go and look and you'll find the information on both Ashley and Ruth there. And if you're interested to learn more about Maracoy, be sure to visit our website at maracoy.com. And I highly recommend that you go and look at Ruth's blog as well. It's up there on the blog, but I've also popped it onto the LinkedIn page earlier this week, so you'll find it there as well. And finally, just one more thing. Be sure to sign up for our newsletter if you haven't already done so, because that's the first way that you will be updated for our next LinkedIn Live event. And we're actually planning a second event later this month to mark Thyroid Cancer Awareness Month. So be sure to stay tuned to our social channels and sign up to our newsletter for more information on that. So all that remains for me to say is thank you most sincerely again to our guests, to Ashley and Ruth. Thank you again for tuning in, and we look forward to seeing you on our next LinkedIn Live later this month. So have a wonderful day, everybody.
Thank you for having us. Thank you, Mary. Thank you, Marie and Ruth.
Also,
and everybody
before we
watching.
go, Ashley has a really good blog too, which is Itching Since 87. So please go, and I've discovered it a few years ago and it's wonderful. So
that's
I haven't
perfect.
updated it in a while, but yes, I'll be working on that. But thank you.
Now this is the little push you need to go and update it then, Ashley.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Thanks everybody.
Happy World Atopic Eczema Day.
Happy World Atopic Eczema Day, yeah.
Bye-bye, everybody.
Bye. Thank you.